We're going to start this off right. What kind of power you got?
Black power.
What kind of power you got? Black power. All power to the people. 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 What kind of power you got?
Black power.
What kind of power you got?
Power.
I can't hear y'all. What kind of power you got? All power to the people. Good job. Let's go. Now the queen want to teach y'all something a little bit. And when the queen speaks, all you have to do is just listen. Let's go.
Ida B. Wells, July 16, 1862, March 25, 1931. Ida B. Wells was a journalist, newspaper editor, suffragist, sociologist, and feminist. Leader of the Civil Rights Movement, active in women's suffrage and rights. In 1887, she sued the Cheapskate and Ohio Railroad Company for $500 and won, but had her case overturned by the Supreme Court of Tennessee. She bought a portion of the Memphis newspaper, the Free Speech and Headlight, and used it as a platform to champion African American civil rights. Co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, also known as NAACP, in 1909. Documented lynchings in the United States in the 1890s, wrote that it was often used in the South as a way to control or punish black people who competed with the whites.
Who competed with the whites?
Marcus Garvey.
Black power.
August 17, 1887 to June 10, 1940. Marcus Garvey was a Jamaican political leader, publisher, journalist, entrepreneur, orator, and proponent of the Pan-Africanism movement. Founded the Universal Negro Improvement and Association and African Communities League in 1914. At its height, the organization had over 5 million paid members worldwide. The largest African diaspora organization of its time. In 1919, established Negro Factories Corporation and founded the Black Star Line, a shipping and passenger line which promoted the return of African diaspora to their ancestral lands, one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century in Jamaica.
Black power.
Francis Cress Welsing, March 18, 1935 to January 2nd, 2016. American-born, Afrocentrist, psychiatrist, and author. Believed people of color needed to liberate themselves psychologically from white domination. In 1974, authored the Cress Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism, White Supremacy, that states people of color must gain a better understanding of the behavioral maneuverings of whites in order to avoid being manipulated into a subordinate position. In 1991, wrote the ISIS Papers, Keys to the Colors, a collection of 25 essays examining the neurosis of white supremacy. Wrote about melanin theory, a claim that white people are the genetically defective descendants of albino mutants. Felt whites strive to maintain a superior social position and manipulate non-whites and themselves into thinking that they are worldwide numerical majority instead of the minority.
Let's go.
Malcolm X.
Black power.
May 19, 1925 to February 21st, 1965. Malcolm X was a Muslim minister and human rights activist. Born Malcolm Little, considered Little a slave name, and chose X to signify his lost tribal name. Appointed as assistant minister of Temple No. 1 in 1953. In 1960, founded the newspaper Muhammad Speaks to further promote the message of Nation of Islam. Terminated the relationship with the Nation of Islam in 1964 and created the religious organization Muslim Mosaic Incorporated. Changed his name to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz and converted to traditional Islam during his pilgrimage to Mecca, Saudi Arabia in 1964. Dr. Yosef Ben Joachim, December 31st,
Dr. Ben,
1918 to March 19, 2015. Dr. Ben was an African-American writer and historian, considered to be one of the most prominent Afrocentric scholars by some in the Black nationalist community. Authored 49 books, primarily on Asian Nile Valley civilization and its influence on Western cultures. In 1945, received doctoral degrees in cultural anthropology and Moorish history from the University of Havana and the University of Barcelona, Spain. Appointed chairman of the African Studies Committee of the newly founded United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization in 1945.
Let's go.
Black Wall Street.
Black Power.
Greenwood, suburb of Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1906 to 1921. Black Wall Street, one of the most successful black economies in American history. O.W. Gurley, a wealthy African American from Arkin, Kansas, moved to Tulsa, purchased over 40 acres of land and sold to other African Americans in 1906. During oil boom of the 1910s, area of northeast Oklahoma around Tulsa flourished. Tulsa race riots of 1921, a two-day massacre of hundreds of black residents, started by a white mob. Over 800 people admitted to area hospitals, estimated 10,000 homeless, 35 city block housings, 1,256 residences destroyed, and 600 successful businesses lost. The community mobilized its resources and rebuilt the Greenwood area within 5 years of the race riot in spite of political efforts to prevent reconstruction.
We do it ourselves. We lace up our boots.
Redlining. Redlining is a practice of marking a red line on a map to delineate an area where banks would not make loans, most frequently discriminated areas where black inner city neighborhoods. The term redlining was coined in the late 1960s by John McKnight, sociologist and community activist. It refers to the denial of services or selectively raised prices to residents of certain areas based on racial or ethnic compositions of those areas. Banks would often lend to lower income whites, but not middle and upper income blacks. Redlining today is illegal and a component of Civil Rights Act of 1968, speaks against racial geographical discrimination.
They just do it another way.
Nat Turner.
Black Power.
October 2nd, 1800 to November 11, 1831. Nat Turner was an enslaved African American who led a rebellion of slaves and free blacks, nicknamed the Prophet. He was a Christian preacher that traveled from plantation to plantation, ministering the so-called slaves about the word of God. He said God spoke to him and told him to lead a revolt,
to fight back,
and to kill his oppressors.
That's what God told him to do, not wait.
He used his preacher network to build his rebellion for freedom. His fight for freedom killed 55 white supremacists, hanged after being judged and sentenced to death. Haitian Revolution.
Black Power.
1791 to 1804. Haitian Revolution was a successful anti-slavery and anti-colonial insurrection, overthrowing the French, led to the West pulling out of the institution of slavery throughout the Americas. Only slave uprising led to the founding of a state free from slavery and ruled by non-whites and former captives. Self-liberated slaves destroyed slavery, fought to preserve their freedom, and with the collaboration of mulattoes, founded the sovereign state of Haiti. Challenged long-held beliefs about blacks' inferiority and enslaved persons' capacity to achieve and maintain freedom. Huey P. Newton,
Black
PhD,
Power.
February 17, 1942 to August 22, 1989. Huey P. Newton was a political activist and revolutionary. Co-founded the Black Panther Party for self-defense in 1966. Overcame illiteracy and attended Merritt College and University of San Francisco School of Law. In 1990, he earned a PhD in social philosophy from the University of California, Santa Cruz. Allied for freedom, full employment, decent housing, education, and military exemption for African Americans. Sponsored a free breakfast program for children, sickle cell anemia tests, free food and shoes, and a school. He was shot and killed in Oakland, California on August 22nd, 1989.
COINTELPRO.
John Henry Clark.
Dr. John Henry Clark.
January 1st, 1915. July 12th, 1998. John Henry Clark was a Pan-Africanist writer, historian, and professor. Pioneered the creation of Africana studies and professional institution in academia starting in the late 1960s. Founded the African Heritage Studies Association and Black Caucus of the African Studies Association in 1968. Challenged the views of academic historians and helped shift the way African history was studied and taught. Actively deconstructed the lies, propaganda, and miseducation of white supremacy via lectures, debates, academic research, and books. Met and mentored many of the great minds throughout the African diaspora. One of his landmark works is a documentary called A Great and Mighty Walk about his life and history of Africans throughout time and history of the globe.
If y'all want more, let us know. That's just a little lesson, man, from the Queen. You feel me? Mothers are the first teachers and fathers are the first leaders. Be the person you want to see. Arm yourself with knowledge and arm yourself and fight for your freedom. Let's go.